Hi, and welcome to the Thinking Out Loud podcast. My name is Jendrek,
My name is Masha.
and we are two English teachers who, what are we doing this week, Masha?
We are recording an episode of the Thinking Out Loud podcast.
Right. I'm not hangover. Just,
Yeah, right.
just to let you know.
Yeah,
Because
Monday.
you're right. But I'm losing my voice because of some infection. But
I thought you would say
great.
because I was working hard,
Yeah, I was
educating
working
people.
hard, but
Too much
Okay,
people
no,
talking
it's
time,
infection.
right. Where's that voice? Where's that voice in the background, Masha?
Oh, it's our special guest today. Yeah, we have a special guest. And who is it?
Well, it's a famous teacher, I guess. Someone that the world of ELT knows very well.
The teacher, the teacher trainer, the teacher, the writer. I mean, I don't even
an
know
entrepreneur,
where
I
to
guess.
start. Yeah, introducing you. So if you had to
Start with teacher.
Okay, it's Mr. Hugh Dellar.
It is.
It is.
Hello, both of you, and hello
Hi,
to
Hugh.
everyone out there.
Hi, Hugh.
Hey,
Hi, Hugh. It's a pleasure to have you here. It all started a few weeks back when we hosted Tamara, and we basically mentioned your name, and I said that it would be great to have you. I remember, Masha, your reactions that
your wish is
said,
my command.
It's no point asking him, he's too busy to come, I mean, he would never agree.
But don't ask, don't get.
Yeah.
And Hugh, I didn't ask you like directly. I just mentioned, that we mentioned you, and then you got interested in that. And...
I'm shameless. I'm just like, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah,
that sounds fun. Breaks the day
anyway,
up a little bit,
It's great to be having you here. I'm not sure if you know what kind of podcast this is, because
I've listened to a couple of episodes.
Yeah, we are recording that. Basically for our students as a form of input.
Mm-hmm.
So before we dive into whatever conversation is ahead of us, I'd just like to sort of remind you that you're speaking for our students. So maybe, I don't know, slow down.
Okay.
Don't use vocab that is,
Try not to swear too much.
Try not. Maybe you can swear. Oh, why not?
No, swearing is allowed. No.
Okay.
Swearing is okay.
Okay, that's good.
All right, Masha. So before we start this thinking out loud proper, let's remind our guests that there's our website, and it's studiomentals.com. If anyone is interested in joining us and studying with us, come on, don't hesitate. There's a contact form. What else? We have a beautiful idea of recording voice mails.
It turned out to be very difficult to do.
It hasn't taken off yet, as of yet. But I kind of know why. I think the system basically requires login and in some cases downloading an app, which totally sucks, honestly. I think we'll work on that. So anyway, I'm still inviting you to record a voicemail. Just click the link that is in the description, whether it's Spotify or a new system. I think I'll fix it. I'll try to fix a new system there. Fine. And last but not least, there's also a way to express your gratitude for the fact that this show is online and it's running. It has been running for more than a year right now. And
you have something to listen to when you are on a treadmill, right? This is
exactly.
So it's
exactly.
good for
I say
exercising.
Exactly.
So you can buy us a virtual coffee, or a virtual beer, or a virtual whatever.
The link is in the description. Thanks a lot for everything. All right. So I guess we are set for the conversation with Hugh Dellar.
Yes.
Hugh, I'll just, Masha, if you don't mind, I'll just like to run this first part of
go ahead. Go ahead.
Of our meeting, because Hugh, you are here because we mentioned your name a few weeks back in reference to the ongoing war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I said that it's quite impressive what you have been doing ever since the invasion, the full-scale invasion, because we know that the war has actually been going on for many years now. But you didn't hesitate. I see that both you as Hugh Dellar, but also, if I'm not mistaken, Lexical Lab, your language school, right?
Yeah,
is kind of actively
losing students.
Losing. Yeah, you said it, but I would just like to ask you, because and for our listeners who don't know, Hugh Dellar has been traveling extensively all over the Central and Eastern Europe. I think you have been in Poland many times, and in Ukraine and countless times.
Many times. Russia
exactly
60 times.
And tell us, because you have also had some business, right, in these countries, especially in Russia.
Yeah.
So tell us. I'm just curious. How does it look like today? How are things going, basically?
So, I guess the first thing to say is part of what I've been doing is driven by a feeling of not having seen things clearly enough earlier, in a way. I knew after 2014 that I wasn't going to go to Crimea. I was in Crimea in 2012 and 2013, and I've been invited there since then, and I knew I didn't want to go, and kind of I just didn't feel it was ethical or possible to do that for me. I also had been in Donetsk in 2013, and I knew people who'd left Donetsk. But again, I think it took me quite a long time to really grasp. I mean, maybe like a lot of Ukrainians, actually, and certainly people in the West.
Yeah, absolutely.
It took a lot of people a long time to realize the full implications of what had happened and what it was leading to. And so right up until October 20, what year are we on now? 23, 20, until October 21, I was still traveling to Russia. I used to go and do a lot of teacher training courses there. I'd get invited over by Russian schools, Russian methodologists. We were selling a lot of books there. The Outcome series was very popular. The lexical approach was very popular. I had people that I thought were quite close friends there. A few of whom I'm still friends with, some of whom I'm not so friends with anymore. And I always kind of enjoyed traveling there and thought I kind of understood the country. But like a lot of the Russians I know, I also realized I understood the country much less well than I thought I did. And, what one of my Russian friends said recently, that she'd always known there were two very different Russias, but she never realized there was going to be a civil war between them. And I think for a lot of people, that's been their experience there, of realizing that the nasty, scary side of the country has kind of not only started kind of obviously doing horrific things in Ukraine, but is also increasingly clamping down on everything inside Russia. And I didn't see it coming. Well, in retrospect, it's easy to think you saw traces of things that were coming. And in retrospect, I think of conversations I've had, and I think of things I've seen while I've been in Russia, and you kind of go, oh, of course, why couldn't I have seen where that was going to? But once the full-scale invasion happened, everything became incredibly clear to me. And I kind of felt like I had a moral obligation to speak. And I think the fact that I knew I had a lot of followers who were in Russia and in Belarus and in Ukraine, I felt a kind of compulsion to represent Ukrainian voices and to kind of try and talk to the broad audience. I mean, up until the war started, I was still teaching online classes which had Ukrainians, Belarusians, Poles, Czechs, Spanish, you know, Kazakhs all kind of together in one group. And that obviously fell to pieces very quickly. It became very obvious to me very quickly as well that I wouldn't be going back to Russia, you know, possibly ever again in my life. Certainly no time, you know, no time soon. And it became obvious to me that a lot of people I'd met in Russia were kind of at various levels of denial or open sympathy with mass murder, and more the former. I think a lot of people were basically just so unable to process what was going on. 20 years of being out of politics messes your head up, and I think that you could see very quickly that they just couldn't process what was happening, and they had no equipment for thinking about it. And then what you see underneath that is all of the legacy of Russian imperialism and Russian imperial thinking. And as an English person who's kind of interested in history and decolonization of the English space, that was something I intuitively kind of recognize and understand that, yeah, this is an imperial war. This is a war of kind of imperial overreach. And very quickly, it started affecting Ukrainians I knew in different places. I mean, you know, I spent a lot of time in Kharkiv, for example. And so right at the beginning of the war, people I know are living in basements under constant shelling. And I'm trying to keep in touch with people whilst I'm also getting messages from Russian teachers kind of saying, how can you know what's really happening?
Yeah, that's the most.
How can I find out? You know, and just all that kind of thing made me feel like I had to speak out about it. And
yeah, well, Hugh, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, what is really interesting for me is that it's not only like you personally, but you also kind of made it. I would say it doesn't sound too
the lexical lab thing.
Yeah, but no, yeah, exactly. I mean, do you think there is a place in language courses for this sort of you know, current events? And
yeah,
because
absolutely.
absolutely,
I mean,
what's happening?
So, I mean, part of the problem is I don't have any other Instagram account apart from the Lexical Lab account. Okay, and Andrew, my co-author, who I run Lexical Lab with, basically doesn't do social media. So I told him quite early on, I'm going to start posting about Ukraine and about the war. And he basically said, you run it, you do what you want with it. Okay. I knew it would affect potential customers and it would affect our business. And even some Russians who left Russia wouldn't want to study with us anymore. I hadn't realized quite how much hate mail I'd get as a result of it, and death threats and all kinds of, you know, I hope the Azov battalion kill you, rape your children, all that kind of stuff. Totally normal things. Oh yeah, fairly regularly, that kind of stuff. Once a month or something, I get a kind of death threat and people telling me they can fuck me up and they can hurt me in ways that I'll never know. And these are teachers, sometimes
and teachers who you knew?
These are teachers who I've sometimes met. Yeah, seriously.
I can't believe that.
You know, I'll share the emails with you if you want. I keep a good stash of them. You know, if you ever come back to Russia, there'll be consequences for you, all these kinds of things. How dare you have visited our country and made money, and now you say these things about us? And it's like, yes, if you make money somewhere, you must never criticize it ever. You know, that kind of thing. Just mad stuff. But I think I kind of decided that partly, I mean, it wasn't a pragmatic decision. It was an emotional decision. And I then sort of realized that it was also a filtering process, and that if there were people out there I'd met who were okay with the war, I didn't want them to be following me. I didn't want them to study with me. I didn't want them to buy them. I don't need anything from them. And I don't want to be in contact with those people, because we can disagree about many things. We can disagree about methodology or Brexit or football or, you know, where the best borscht is from or whatever. we can't disagree about mass murder. It's a kind of fundamental red line for me as a human being. So it was a good way of filtering people out. It was also a way of kind of not only amplifying Ukrainian voices, but I soon realized it was also a way for a lot of people on the other side of the border to feel, in a strange way, reflected, because it was saying things that for whatever reason they didn't feel they were able to say or to speak out about. But yeah, I mean, as a business decision, not a great decision, but I'm lucky in that I'm in a position where it's not the be all and end all of my financial income. And in a way, I think also, you know, when you realize your publishing company's pulled out of a country, you're never going to sell books there again for the next 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it's going to be. I'm not going to do any more training courses there. You just kind of go, well, that's £10,000 a year I'm not going to see again. Okay. And I know it also alienates some other people. There's people who aren't involved, as they see it, in the conflict directly, like people following me from Brazil or something, who are like, or people following me from other parts of the world where there are ongoing conflicts that they feel are neglected, kind of going, well, why are you just going on and on and on and on and on and on about this? And I have to have those conversations as well. And so for me, it's like, well, because these are places I know really well, and these are people I know very well.
I'd like to ask you, because, you know, it's I have also attended since the invasion, attended some conferences, and obviously there's this awkward situation when Russian and Ukrainian teachers meet or are in the same room. Yeah. And I mean, it's also awkward for me being a Paul, and also I have clearly defined, you know, outlook on what's happening. It's kind of weird to meet Russian teachers and talk about, I don't know what, you know, there's an elephant in the room,
the
but
weather.
You can't,
the weather,
but you can
mention it.
Topic. Yeah. And I wonder if your decisions affected also your conference going. Like, I mean, how do you react to?
Yes, so we do a lexical lab scholarship, okay, and every year we pay for someone who's a kind of lexically minded teacher to come to IATEFL. Last year, the winner was, before the war started, a woman called Marina Dolgacheva, who is from, where's she from? I remember, somewhere in Russia, and she'd never been outside of Russia before. I'd met her a few times, and we always got on very well. And she couldn't come last year because there was a kind of just shut down on travel and stuff, and IATEFL just couldn't facilitate it. And we had a long discussion about whether or not we would honor our award to her. This year's winner came from Vietnam. And in the end, Marina came over from Russia. We had a long discussion with her first. She then met Anya Plaxienko, who's this amazing Ukrainian teacher trainer who's now based in Manchester. And in the end, it was all just talked about. And my feeling about the elephant in the room is you kind of prod the elephant and you talk about the elephant because it's there. And Marina ended up crying and Anya ended up crying, and it was very, very emotional. And at the same time, I completely understand if you're a Ukrainian teacher and you don't want to be anywhere near any Russian teachers whatsoever. I'm not someone that believes, you know, I'm able to bring about a reconciliation of these different teachers, because it's a stupid, naive thing to think. But I do know that there are some people who are more and some people who are less comfortable with being in those situations than others. And for me, I guess, so long as the people I'm dealing with absolutely understand where I'm coming from, and I have a sense that they're coming from a similar place, obviously not a completely similar place because we're from different countries, we're in different situations, then I can live with that. So, I mean, I still have some Russian students I'm teaching, almost all outside of Russia. I only teach them on the understanding that they're explicitly anti-war and they follow me on social media and they know my positions. And I understand there are some Ukrainians who have problems with me doing that. You know, I've had emails from Ukrainians kind of saying, how can you even talk to any of these people anymore? And I understand that. I don't blame people for thinking that. If I was Ukrainian, I'd probably feel the same. But
yeah, we tend to overreact now. But
I understand that. You know, I mean, my uncle, my uncle, my dad's uncle didn't speak to a German or a Japanese person ever in his life after the Second World War, ever.
Wow.
Every time he heard a German in the street, he'd spit and cross the road, you know, for 30 years after the war. I understand those reactions, but I also know from traveling there for 25 years that there's a lot of people who, you know, I know Ukrainians will struggle to believe this, but I know there's a lot of people there who very, very, very much want a very different kind of country for themselves. And, you know, maybe now are regretting the fact they haven't done more over the years to try and fight for that. But that's the way it is, I think. And yeah, it's very awkward. It's very, very awkward. And I do feel awkward myself. I mean, I was learning Russian. I've stopped learning Russian. I'm planning to start learning Ukrainian in the summer to see how much of it translates, because at least I can read Cyrillic. So, you know, I've got to do something useful with the Cyrillic. Yeah. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if because for some reason, you know, I stopped following many accounts, many language schools and teachers. This is just this was getting me frustrated, I guess.
I've also I've just learned that I cannot comment on anything I see Russians posting on social media, because I see someone post. I mean, I saw a teacher I knew from Moscow who's now moved to Thailand, and she posted this beautiful picture of her relaxing in the nature. And my immediate reaction is just to post pictures of, you know, destroyed animals in fields in Ukraine and kind of go, meanwhile, in Ukraine, and here's a picture. And I see people kind of posting, St. Pete's is lovely in the evening. And it's like, meanwhile, here's Mariupol. And I get very, very, and you know, if I'm feeling like this, I can't imagine how Ukrainians are feeling about this. And I get very triggered seeing, here's my normal life continuing on Facebook or on Instagram. And it's like that kind of, it's like a kind of schizophrenia where I'm on social media and all of my Ukrainian friends are posting about their experiences, about the war, about raising money, about, you know, where they are as refugees or whatever. And then I see Russians posting, here I am in Turkey on holiday. And I, you know, they could be killing people, I know, but it's still very, very, I don't know, if you're in an international context, can you not see how crass and insensitive this is to do? But then I also remember I'm from a country which started a particularly murderous, pointless, bloody war that none of us wanted. And we tried to stop it, the Iraq war, and we didn't. And while I was teaching, I mean, I had an Iraqi guy in my class when the bombing of Baghdad started, and a stray bomb killed his sister and her 6 children. And he came into class that day, and I was teaching him, and I have to look in the eyes a guy who's just lost his sister and her 6 children because my country's dropped a bomb on them. And, you know, I would hate for him to hold me eternally responsible for that. Even though obviously to a degree I am responsible for that. And I acknowledge my...
I mean, this is something I was thinking a lot about recently. I mean, you know, the passports we have and how how we are responsible for what our countrymen, especially, you know, those who govern, what they do. It's kind of weird. I mean, what should let's say the decent, I believe there are decent citizens of Russia do? I mean, should they be like, you know, punishing themselves, or I don't know, disappear from the social media or from the whole world? I would definitely feel like that. I had this feeling, you know, when I met some Russian teachers in Barcelona last year, I mean, I felt like, maybe last year, 2022 is not the best year for your international travels. I mean, was my feeling, maybe if I was a Russian teacher, I'd just stay at home for that particular year, especially that was complicated. They had to fly through Istanbul, and, and it's a lot of effort, but still it was my sort of feeling, that maybe I would sit out that year, maybe this year too. It's just 2 years, I don't know. But then again, I don't know. I don't know.
Want to
everything is
what I'd do, because I'm not in that. I don't, I know how I'd like to imagine I'd react, but obviously I don't know how I'd react because I'm not in that situation. And so my wife always tells me I'm very quick to jump to judgments on people, and that you can't know yourself unless you're in those situations. And she's probably right.
All right. So I just, unless Masha, unless you want to ask something here, I would just like to say that it's really impressive what you're doing, and it's I mean, well, people like myself, I noticed that, and it's really impressive what your stance and your your sort of crusade on Twitter. when you answer all these trolls,
screaming into the void.
I don't know. I mean, it's getting noticed. I hope you are getting some likes for that. But it's really impressive from the moral point of view. And if it's not a good business choice now, I think you will assess that differently in the coming years. That
maybe. I mean, it's not done on those grounds whatsoever. And in a way, I don't need it to be one thing or the other. It's just something that I feel is right. And I think it's also understanding that what's changed from 2014 to now is, I think, Ukraine is much more equipped in countering Russian disinformation. There are a lot more Ukrainians out there on social media who speak really great English, who know how to get the message across to Western audiences about what's actually happening. And there are a lot more people outside of Ukraine who are sympathetic to Ukraine, who are involved in trying to counter Russian disinformation. And I mean, also, Russian disinformation has become so batshit crazy. I mean, it's so insane. It's so insane. And you're just like,
couldn't
seriously?
you come up with something a little bit?
This is the lie you're telling this week? Seriously? Like, I mean, I'm doing this thing on Instagram where I do a live once a month with a Ukrainian teacher of English. And yesterday I interviewed this woman called Eva Tatarova, who's originally from Lugansk Oblast. And she sent me some photos from Luhansk in 2014. And there were these posters up saying, why do the gays have so many rights and fighting fascism? And it was like, oh, it's good to see Russia's adapted its propaganda in the intervening years. It's just like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, same shit over and over again, with added Nazis and Satanists.
It's quite brazen. I mean, it's
amazing.
Subtle.
It's amazing that it's sold to not only a domestic audience. I mean, that there's a section within every society within Europe and America who are susceptible to some or other of those angles. And I mean, I see it here in the UK. I see people, as a kind of left-wing person myself, I see people who are kind of further to the left than me, whose disgust at British and American imperialism has kind of led them to this place where they're susceptible to Russian narratives.
But I've always wondered, how does it happen? I mean, I can totally understand why Russians are buying it. I can totally understand that.
And I get why right-wing people buy it as well. But Hitler, strong man, hates the gays, hates women, good white, strong leader. We like all that because we're fascists too. Why people on the left do it? Because because of Iraq, basically. It's Iraq, and it's supporting people like Pinochet in Nicaragua, and then it's supporting Saddam and then bombing Iraq back to the Stone Ages. It's supporting the Mujahideen and then invading Afghanistan to kill the Mujahideen. And it's the kind of hypocrisy of Western foreign policy that has so disgusted them that they have this belief in a multipolar world. And because traditionally that side of the left has always slightly kind of fetishized the Soviet Union and the idea of communism, and, you know, Moscow sort of being the home of an imperfect dream that never quite was fully realized, and a lot of the original kind of socialist or anarchist thinkers coming from that part of the world. And so they're kind of susceptible to that idea that, you know, by supporting Russia, you're somehow supporting the fight against Western imperialism.
So it's not so much pro-Russia as against.
It's our enemy's enemy
Okay.
must be our friend.
Okay.
You know, it's one of those.
Yeah, is that kind of line of thinking.
And it's like,
all
you
right.
know, sometimes your enemy's enemy can be a worse enemy. And sometimes you might have to go back to your first enemy and think maybe they're your friend at the moment. I mean,
Okay.
you know, for me, that's not a hard thing to understand, but yeah.
All right, Hugh, thanks for sharing with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for
asking. The backstory. I don't know if anyone has been asking you about that.
First time I've talked about it openly in public.
All right, great.
Well, I'm sure you've heard it many times from Ukrainian teachers, but anyway, we really, really appreciate what you're doing. It's really important for us. And I think nobody in ILT, at least I don't know anybody who is doing, you know, what you're doing. So thank you very much.
I wonder what's actually this is the last leg of this conversation, but I wonder what our industry at large is doing actually, and how is it reacting, because I see a really like a very, very benign reaction.
Yeah, I think that you cannot take IELTS in Russia, and that's it, basically, right?
There's most of the big publishers have pulled out of Russia. I think most of them have. And I mean, I know for us, there's no thought of doing any business in Russia for the next 10 years at least.
Well, business, I mean, you can get these, you know, PDF copies online anyway.
Of course they can, you know, I mean, they've been on their Contactor VK for years anyway. So it's like, I'm sure the 3rd edition will soon find its way onto VK, you know, it's like, whatever. You can't stop that. I'll take it as a kind of perverse form of compliment.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, great, Masha. So let's go. Let's go into the thinking out loud proper, because, you know, having a guest of this caliber, we have to ask some of our questions. You know, Hugh, I hope you know the rules. I mean, there are no rules. You just answer the question, right? I mean, the best you can. But the idea is that the questions are supposed to be difficult no matter the language you are speaking. So for you, of course, it's L1, but when we ask our guests, usually Polish or Ukrainian students, you know, the questions are hard in themselves, simply because no matter the language you speak. Okay. So, Masha, I hope that if I hit this play button, you are going to hear it. So let's go to.
No, we didn't hear anything. Maybe it's, you know, it's round 1, but we never get to round 2. So let's just
all right, great. Yeah, exactly. So Masha, I guess you're asking. So come on.
Oh, we are asking the question today, and we've agreed on the question for okay, so what do you think, what is the difference between memorizing and learning?
Because I guess the effect is the same, right?
Not necessarily. It's a very interesting question, and I think for a long time the idea of memorizing has probably been downplayed or downgraded. And I would say that the role of memory in language teaching, and probably in learning in general, in language learning and in learning in general, has been underestimated. And I think obviously memorizing plays a large role in learning things. you know, in order to learn anything, there needs to be a degree to which you memorize things. Okay. At the same time, I think you can also memorize things. And I guess this is where the negative reaction towards the idea of memorizing comes from. You can memorize things and repeat them or regurgitate them without having any real understanding of what they mean or how they work. So I mean, when I was much younger, I played in a band, and we used to listen to a lot of Dutch music from the 1960s, as you do if you grow up in small town England in the 1980s. And we used to do a couple of songs in Dutch, and I had no idea what the lyrics meant, but I just kind of listened to them and phonetically memorized the lyrics. And, you know, I still remember the titles. There were songs like Parse Broek and Kassikaichen. And I have no idea what I was singing.
I'm curious, but you had no desire to get to know the meaning of it. I mean,
I remembered one of the titles meant purple trousers. I think that's
it was enough. Yeah.
Actually, and then I just remembered to memorize the lyrics.
I did the same with French songs, and I never felt, well, I mean, of course, it would be nice to know if I'm not singing some nonsense, you know, but I just trusted the singer.
The artist, all right.
Yeah.
And
I just trusted the punk rock bands, you know.
Dutch, with the title Purple, whatever.
Purple trousers, Parse Broek. And I mean, my son has memorized pi to like 25 digits or something. And, you know, is that the same as learning about the importance of pi? It's obviously not. Is memorizing a couple of songs in Dutch the same as learning Dutch? It's obviously not. So memorizing in and of itself can either be part of a useful learning process, or it can be a completely pointless activity you engage in just for the hell of it because it entertains you for whatever reason. Or sometimes if you're at school, it can be something that you have to do because, you know, my wife's memory of school growing up in Indonesia in the 80s and 90s was memorizing a hell of a lot of stuff for no discernible purpose or goal other than to get the teachers off your back. And most of that memorization didn't go on to form the basis of any particularly solid learning. At the same time, if you're learning a language, memorizing things is absolutely essential because, you know, you know what it's like when you're learning a new language, especially, you can hear something, you can see it written down, you can understand what it means, you can grasp it, and then you forget it. And then the next lesson, you hear it again, and you have a memory of having previously understood it, and the memory of having understood it is there, but the memory of what it means is completely gone. And so
it's the class and communicative approach. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And I think, you know, because of the communicative approach and because of the 60s and because of the influence of the hippies in English language teaching and this whole emphasis on being creative and expressing yourself and being fluent, that's all lovely, but that doesn't help you do the donkey work of memorizing things. And there's a lovely quote, I can't remember who by, which probably tells you something about me, but the quote is, "Memory is genius." And, you know, it's like, I mean, I used to do some DJing, and the people I know who are really great DJs remember every record they've got, and they've got like 15,000 singles or something, and they remember everything, and they know which tracks work with which tracks, and they can. Me, I'm kind of, I hear something and I go, I know this song, I know this song, I know this song, I know this song, and then I can't remember what it is, and I've probably got it sitting there in front of me, but I can't remember it. And if you can't remember that stuff, you're at a disadvantage when compared to the people who can remember that stuff. So I think memorizing is a very important part of learning, despite the fact it can also be nothing to do with learning. And I guess where learning goes deeper is you start to understand how the things you've memorized fit together. You start to play with the bits and pieces that you've memorized. You start to work out that you can chop up half of one thing you've memorized and stick it together with another half of something you've memorized. But you need to have a kind of bedrock of stuff to work with, whether that's as a musician or a language learner or a teacher.
Hugh, you don't believe in outsourcing
The memory.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
technology.
It's very dangerous. I think it's very dangerous. I mean, obviously, we all do that, yeah. And it's not that I completely
multiplication
believe
table
in outsourcing things, but I think, you know, the risk that we run with the idea of outsourcing memory to technology is we lose the ability to do things ourselves. And I think anything worth doing involves quite a lot of hard work, and you need to do the work to get to the point where you enjoy the thing that you're doing, you know. And I think you just have to work through that. And I mean, I have this conversation with my own children. It's like, I know it's hard, but you want to get to the fun bit, you have to do the hard bit first. And yeah, sure,
how do you explain to them what the fun bit is? Because I'm struggling with that, you know.
Well, because it's like, so they might listen to me and my wife talking Indonesian together, and we might be laughing about something, and they're going to go, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about?" We're talking about you. You know. And they're like, well, if you want to get to the stage where you can do this and understand this, you have to put some work in to get there.
Yeah, with language it's kind of
someone
easy.
playing a guitar. My son's learning the guitar at the moment. You watch someone playing the guitar and really feeling it and enjoying it. Well, to get there, you're going to get blisters on your fingers, kid. You know, that's how it works. You have to work through that to get to this. You can't get to the stage where you're really enjoying it and you're in the moment and you're flowing with it without doing all the grunt work. Same with anything.
With anything. I mean, other subject, like, of course, playing a guitar is something that appeals to you. I mean, speaking a language, you can hear your parents speaking a different language. But what about, I don't know, math, physics?
Maths. It's the same thing.
They think that they were never going to need this. Why bother, you know, memorizing all this stuff?
It depends on the student. Okay. So, I mean, yeah. So for my daughter, she's very clearly, she hates maths, and she's going to have to force herself to get her maths O level, because you've got to get your maths O level. My son loves maths and is very kind of science minded, and he likes memorizing formulas and understanding things for the sake of understanding it. And possibly he'll go on and do some kind of maths related work at some point in the future. But I do think there is still a value in just remembering things in order to keep your memory working, you know. And I mean, a lot of what you learn at high school, you kind of forget, but what you retain is the process of how you try to remember things, you know. And I think that's important. And I think, particularly if you're a language teacher or a language learner, memory is really, really central to what we do. And I think for a long time we've underestimated the importance of memory.
Would you see let's say a memory training as part of a course of foreign language learning or teaching?
Not
like a separate, you know.
I mean, you could do. I mean, for me, I would regard that just as absolutely integral to everything I'm doing in the classroom. A lot of what I'm doing in the classroom is about memory and checking you remember things and recycling things and asking questions to see what you remember about things and doing revision tests and all of that kind of stuff. Particularly if it's a class I'm seeing regularly and they're a lower level group, and trying to build in different kind of revision exercises and techniques into what we do all the time. So I'm not averse to the idea, but I would rather see it as part and parcel of what happens all the time anyway.
All right. I'm just after what you said, you know, I think there's a difference between exactly memorizing and cramming stuff.
Yeah.
Because but I wonder, however, what actually makes this difference? Is it the
I think cramming is more to do with
it's what you do with it then after you've committed it to memory, you know.
So I get, because if you manage to build it,
you forget.
Yeah, but if you manage to build some kind of context, I don't know, to situate this you know, memorized knowledge into some sort of context, then I guess it becomes alive in the sense that, you know, it becomes generative, like you said, that you can, you know, substitute things, you know, you can manipulate this and use it. But
can you really call knowledge what you only memorized? I think it's knowledge if you've learned it. No?
And where's the line?
Mm.
Well, where's the line? Yeah. That's the
I mean,
question.
in order to learn it, you do need to have remembered it.
Yeah, but sometimes you never go past that.
That's true, and I think that's where the line is. I guess, you know, you can memorize a poem without really having any sense of what it's about or what it means. It may be in order to kind of really get into it. It's like when you're doing a play, okay? You can remember the lines of a play that you may be appearing in, and you can deliver them in an incredibly kind of wooden, flat, dead sort of way, just because you're just repeating the words without any real sense of them. Or you can really learn them and internalize them and start to kind of, I guess for me, the line is, at what point do you start to add something of yourself to what you've remembered? And that can just be the way you read a poem, or the way you play a song, or the way you repeat a line, or the way you retell a joke that someone else told you, and you kind of memorize it, and then you kind of internalize it and you make it part of yourself, and then
so you're like adding an emotional layer to it, right?
Yeah.
Well, if it's a technical thing,
sorry,
if it's something technical, you just need to apply it.
Yeah,
okay. Like I've memorized lots of stuff at school. I mean, maths, physics, chemistry. I was a really good student, but I never got to. I don't know. Maybe I didn't have a chance. Maybe I wasn't. I don't know why, but I never ever used the stuff I memorized at school, and I don't know why I learned it.
You didn't go down that career road.
No, it's not. I mean, it's basic knowledge that everybody should know, something like how, I don't know, a TV works, and I don't, you know. So
I don't think you need that stuff unless you either have inquisitive small children who go, but how? And you have to go,
today you have Google. You know, my son said
at
some point, I understand now that I should stop asking you these questions because you're unable to answer them, and I will Google them. I said, okay, thank you. I don't know how to answer all these questions.
I used to have a list. Well, I still have a list of questions my son's asked me that I can't answer. Yeah. And we just have this list, and every now and then we sit and work through some of the questions on the list.
Yeah, that's great.
They're kind of crazy questions. They're like, do you think butterflies know that they're butterflies?
We should put it on the list.
You know, it's those kind of questions, and you're like, I'm not even sure what a butterfly knows. How are you defining know what a butterfly is? You know, I mean, does it know what it looks like? Does it have a sense of how, you know? And we sit and talk about this and Google things and watch videos and discuss it.
And so does it? No?
It depends what you mean. I mean, obviously it doesn't know it's a butterfly in terms of the way that we define a butterfly using the word butterfly, or whatever word you use in your language for butterfly. Kupu-kupu in Indonesian. Lovely word. It doesn't know it's a kupu-kupu or a butterfly or whatever, but it does apparently have a sense of its own visual image, which is how it recognizes other butterflies. You know, so as far as they can tell.
And it definitely knows what it was born to do, you know. I mean, it doesn't guess. What's the meaning of life? It knows exactly. You know.
I know. Much easier for those guys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. Great. I'm wondering. Thanks, Hugh, for sharing your ideas about this memorizing and learning. It's not easy to separate.
It's not.
I wonder, you know, if we think about mechanical skills, like, driving a car, how big part of that is actually memorizing?
Massive. Well, it's memorizing and making automatic, or kind of automatizing, I think. So I didn't learn to drive till I was quite late, till 35 when I first started driving. And I can remember still, for the first, I don't know, many hours of learning to drive and then properly driving, always having to consciously think like, okay, my engine's starting to make a bit of a noise, need to change gear, put my foot on the clutch, do that, okay, second gear. And I was conscious of that all the time, and then thinking, shit, look at the road, look at the mirrors, try not to kill anyone, panic. you know, all the time panic. Like when you first start teaching, you're just constantly panicking about, in 5 minutes, I need to do the listening. So I need to announce this first. And then I need to make sure I press that button. And then I need to remember to check on the cassette recorder where the beginning of the audio is. And you're kind of constantly panicking about remembering all of this stuff. And eventually you do those things enough that they become automatic, and you kind of, you reach a stage where you stop consciously having to remember them, just because they become part of you in a way, and then you're able to focus on things beyond that. So it's a different kind of memorization. It's like a kind of proceduralizing or automatizing those things. Same as when you play a sport or when you're playing chess or something, you know, you have all these kind of automatized things that you do that are part of that, that you just kind of, you burn into the muscle memory, or you burn into the kind of the schema or the frame that you use to process those things.
And when you learn a language, some things also become automatic. I mean, especially if you learn phrases, you know.
Yeah.
They are like building blocks.
Yeah, and you just kind of learn to proceduralize them, and you know, there's a touch to which it's that kind of Pavlov's dogs thing, like, you know, how are you? Fine, thank you.
Yeah. Some tea? No, thank you. Yes, please. No, thank you.
It's, you know, some of that is just kind of no brain stuff.
It's a no-brainer, but I think you can add some personality there, or
once
even if you repeat it,
once you've learned those bits. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe, who knows, the essence of education, you know, when you add your personality, or you make your personality show through what you're doing, right?
And I think the problem is trying to add your personality before you've at least got some basics.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean,
I think
that's why I never really learned the guitar properly, because I was too lazy and undisciplined as a 14, 15-year-old to do the donkey work and learn all the chords and learn the scales. And instead, you know, in my head, I just wanted to be Jimi Hendrix or something, kind of soloing away, without understanding that he only got to that point having done years and years and years of doing all the donkey work first. And so that's, you know, it's like if you're learning a language and you get so frustrated that you're stuck at, you know, this is my mother, she's retired.
The
and
ball
you're thinking,
is on the table.
You know, no, I want to discuss, you know, imperialism and the war and current affairs and pedagogy. And instead you're kind of doing, you know, I have one brother. If you get frustrated by that and you want to go on to the more expressive, creative stuff, well, good luck, because you ain't gonna get there necessarily.
Wow, Masha, this is like what you are saying. It goes kind of counter to what we are doing, I guess, because I'm able to ask those you know, open questions to even low levels, except that they are
you can
adults.
ask them.
So you know, it's a matter of translating their thoughts, not really learning, you know, what to think. But still,
I'm not saying low-level students can't answer complicated questions. I'm just saying that in order to learn how to have those conversations properly to the degree that you might wish to as a sentient, intelligent human being, you have to do some learning. And the learning won't always be fun or communicative or expressive or creative or personal. You know, some of the learning.
But do you think it has to start, or always has to start? It always have to. Oh my God! It always has to start with, I have one brother. Why?
No, it doesn't. It can start with all sorts of things. It could start with, have you been here before? You know, why not?
Or what do you think of imperialism? It's a matter of
very bad.
Yeah,
very bad. You bad. Agree. You know, you can start there. It's a different starting point.
Yeah, that's a benefit of having a one-to-one class, you know, when
exactly.
and sharing the same language. When
exactly,
because I mean, Jędrek, with your lower level students, there's a lot of Polish, at the beginning going on.
I guess, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm learning a language from scratch, there's no way I would want a monolingual teacher. I want a bilingual
Yeah,
teacher
who will
also
explain
speaks
what a
English.
frog is. It will take him
That
15
one.
minutes. Yeah.
That
Frog.
For
I
example.
will always remember your example with a frog.
Bloody frogs. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a good place to finish. Guys, don't ignore memorization. Do the hard work. Yeah, go to Quizlet sets Yenter creates for you. Visit your Quizlet sets or memorize sets, which I create
Yeah,
for you.
recycle,
Yeah.
repeat. Yes, do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah,
Memorization
and
is
remember that
beginning.
doing the hard work will lead to the fun part later, or
Yeah.
the more fun part later. And to be honest, I mean, even the hard part, there is often something satisfying about it. So, I mean, when I was doing my Russian classes, I would have these kind of bilingual word lists where, it would be in English and then it would be in Russian. And so you'd hear something like mum and dad, and you'd kind of go, mush i zhena, okay? And you'd remember how to say it in the foreign language. And there's this kind of feeling of like, God, go on, I remembered something. And even though it's
You're right.
basically kind of like dull, repetitious kind of memorizing, there's still something satisfying about knowing you've remembered it, and you're kind of like, oh, 7 out of 10, it's next time 8. And it is satisfying knowing that you've remembered things. You know it in class when you're teaching and you're doing like a kind of eliciting thing and you're kind of going, anyone remember the missing word here? And someone shouts out whatever the missing word is and you're like, you got it right. And you can see them kind of going, I remembered something. And it's kind of making your learning visible. And I think that's really important as a learner, to have moments where your learning becomes apparent to you and you're like, hey, I've actually learned something from this effort.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, because it could be the source of tremendous satisfaction, but also frustration. Yeah,
I got
If
3
you
out of 10
keep
wrong.
forgetting. Yeah,
Forgetting. Yeah.
That comes down to your own personal psychology, I guess, in some ways. And as a teacher, if you've got a teacher with you, that comes down to the way your teacher frames your progress and frames your understanding of what's realistic to expect. If you're expecting 10 out of 10 every time, forget it. That's not going to happen. 7 out of 10, be happy. That's good. 2 out of 10 could do better. Yeah, but hey, we've got 2. Could do better.
Yeah, but just to add, but don't forget that this work on vocab is one thing, and then using it in practice is another thing.
Sure.
I've got students who are great on Quizlet, on flashcards, but then somehow this language, I say if you retain 20% from that, or if you use just 1 out of 10 in your production, that's great. That's simply great, because
it's 1 out of 10 for now.
Yeah.
Maybe in another 6 months it'll be different.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's it's a journey.
So bottom line is, any learning starts with memorization. No?
Do I want to commit to that statement? I think we can agree that a lot of learning begins with
okay.
memorization.
Yeah.
I'm a bit wary of absolutist statements.
Yeah, but learning a language requires a lot of memorization, right?
We can agree on this.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Finally,
so people don't forget that, because like you said, we have the tendency to forget that after all, learning languages especially is basically about memorizing stuff. All right.
A lot of stuff.
Great. Hugh, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you
thanks
for your
a lot
time
for
and
the
for
conversation.
the work you're doing and for everything.
Thank you for coming. Yeah. So this is it.
This is it, Masha.
Can I say?
Yeah,
the
of course.
final...
Go to the sacramental phrase.
Yeah, this was another episode of the Thinking Out Loud podcast. Stay tuned for the next one. Bye, everyone.
Wonderful.
Bye.